Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Create Your Life series, where we help you maximize your potential and results in the area of personal development, entrepreneurship, and travel. And I'm your host, Kevin Y. Brown.
Create your life.
Crée ta propre vie.
Create your life.
创造你的生活。
Create your life.
Crea la tua vita.
Create your life.
Und skip your liver.
You better create your life.
Create your life.
Create la vie.
Create your life.
Create your life.
Beautiful people, happy Sunday. This is the Create Your Life series. I'm your host, Kevin Y. Brown, and this is an amazing day. Super happy to be here, and definitely, as usual, you know, we have our amazing guest today. Today is the first Sunday of the month, definitely the first Sunday of the year. So we have CEO Talks here today, and today's topic that we're going to talk about on CEO Talks is actually about difficult negotiations and really how not to give it all away in the beginning. We have Todd Wahnish, CEO of Clever Era, and we also have Eric Fondren, who is the CEO of Itelio. And so you gentlemen, please say hello to the Create Your Life family, and, you know, let's get this conversation started.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Yeah. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, man. How you doing?
I'm good.
Man, I'm so happy and excited to have both of you gentlemen here in the studio with us right now. So I think moving and jumping right in, man, I want to know, have you guys ever had any experiences where you had someone basically, you know, try to take advantage of you, or, you know, some things that didn't feel right? Like, tell us about a actual real life example.
I got a good one. Eric, you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
Oh man, trust me, I'm over here excited too. So I'm gonna let you go.
I love that this is the first one of the new year for CEO Talks, because you just jump right into the hardcore topics. Yeah, man, I'll say it like this. A few years ago, one of my first startups, we had a real huge opportunity to white label the service, and I'd never white labeled anything before. White labeling basically means we license out the site, license out the software, and mask it. We rebrand it under somebody else's name so that it looks like theirs. It looks like they own it, and we basically capture a licensing fee or some type of recurring revenue. These people were really excited. I was really excited, and I negotiated my butt off, man. They were great. I was great. Everything seemed to work out. In fact, one of the rules that I try to live by, especially when I'm dealing with someone new that I'm trying to negotiate with, is I try to either get it the person through a reference, or get it the person through a referral, or find somebody in that circle that I can talk to see other deals that they did, to see if they're on the up and up. So all this stuff checked out. I had a friend of mine who had done a deal with this person, who had gotten paid, who had a great experience with him, and so I thought everything was going to work out fine. And in the early part of the process, it was perfect. We got the contract. It was the biggest contract I'd ever gotten signed. It was a mid six figures. So I was really happy. And everyone was excited, and everything was spot on. And then the trouble started. In fact, the first flag was at first meeting, because inside the contract that we signed and negotiated was that my company was supposed to get a down payment. And they were like, well, it's going to take us a few days to get the funds. This is rather large. So if you just give us just a couple days, we'll get the transfer over. And I was like, well, you knew this was coming. You knew I was going to be coming here today. You saw the contract. Like, you know, we were just here. This was a meeting just to sign the paperwork. Like, oh, but all right. You know, I guess I can understand that. I mean, you know, it was a large contract at the time. So went home happy, but not completely satisfied. And then as I started to follow up, you know, that first 3 days turned into a week. That week turned into 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks turned into about a month. And every time I talked to this guy, he would, always had an excuse, always was putting it off, just around the corner, just coming. 6 months later, 6 months,
wow.
I'm still waiting for this thing to happen. And I'm like, look, you're tying up you're tying up my time, you signed something on the dotted line. And I should also point out that this was like a legitimate company. This was a publicly traded company. So this was not some fly on the wall guy who just like came out of nowhere. This was, what I thought was a legitimate situation. And it got to the point where our lawyers got involved. And the minute I started putting pressure on him, I got a call out of the blue from one of the main investors. And he wanted to schedule a meeting, and I went over there to talk. And real friendly conversation, but this guy, I could tell, you know when you walk in that to a situation like that this was a person who was not pretending to be nice, was very cordial and very professional, but was absolutely just like a ruthless killer, like no doubt, like, no doubt. He had some awards and trophies that were given for owning the most shares in some very large companies and the millions and upon millions of shares. And this person tried to calm the situation. I think he thought I was young, and I think he thought that I hadn't been in situations like this. And that I was able to use that to my advantage a little bit. A lot of times, people don't know your background; they don't know who you know. So he had no way of knowing that my way into entrepreneurship, my original business mentor, taught me everything I know. He himself had just incredible connections. So things like trying to impress me with money or success or things of that nature weren't really going to work on me, but I think this person thought it would. So he was showing me his awards. He started talking about, he introduced me to another client of his that he had done like a $45 million bridge loan to, and expecting it to be impressive, which it is from a professional standpoint, but it's not going to make me fold or beg for something. And his deal was that he wanted to wipe the slate clean. He said, I want to work with you. I like you, kid. But this deal isn't going to happen. We're just going to wipe the slate clean. I was like, yeah, I completely understand that. I actually like you, too. I think we should do business together on some other things because he did like the platform. I said, we can absolutely do that. I'm the same way. Let's wipe the slate clean. Just pay me what you owe me. Just for being, just for the contract, not the completion of the contract, because obviously that's not going to happen, but just what you signed, and we can move forward, and we'll wipe the slate clean. I'll even offer you a kill fee. A kill fee, for those that don't know, is basically a negotiated fee where you just kill the deal. So you pay for something, it usually covers legal costs and maybe a little bit of a headache, but at least you can walk away and say, well, I got something out of the deal. And this guy would not budge. And in fact, it ended up getting a little salty where he was just like, my lawyers are going to crush you, da-da-da-da-da. And, it got it got to the point, like, the interesting thing, to sum it up, basically the way this got resolved is, my attorneys went into it and they came back and they're like, look, this company, even though it's public, like, it doesn't exist. Like, there is nothing on the books here. It just ended up looking like it was a shell company. And, I don't know enough to say whether it's a legal versus illegal. I assume it's all legal. I don't assume he was doing anything wrong. But from my perspective, like the flags on the field of play were just all over the place, and I was out. I was, because of that I ended up negotiating a great deal. They ended up firing the CEO, the guy who ended up signing his name to the contract. They fired him quick. And when the main investor couldn't get a hold of me or couldn't wrangle me in, they just split. So that was my big lesson on negotiating.
Huh. Okay.
I've definitely had something similar, but I don't think it got to that point. I've had two examples of strange negotiations, and one of the things I've learned in a hard negotiation is to know your power in the moment. So that comes from knowing how much you're going to sell your product for. That comes from knowing exactly what you're going to be providing in the entire agreement. So I was negotiating more of a strategic alliance as opposed to a client-vendor relationship. And this other party was looking to provide one skill set, and then somehow it sort of snowballed into this other skill set that they say they could provide. And because of this other skill set, it would have put us on the map if they were able to really bring it to fruition. Mm-hmm. And so they used it as this lever point, basically saying that your company really won't exist without this. And so you have to give us all of these extra nuances, this extra revenue, this extra compensation, because we're literally putting you on the map. Mm-hmm. And so I had already gone through a very, very severe negotiation before that, so I didn't even bat an eye when they started pushing around a little bit of their weight. But ultimately, what it came down to was the contract itself. If you're not aware, it's a legally binding agreement, just like a marriage license is. And so you have to look at it like, if I'm going to get married to this person, how ugly can a divorce get? Right. And if it's very possible for the divorce to get ugly, you need to put in all the exit parameters possible in that contract so that you can easily, it's basically like a premarital agreement, or a prenuptial rather. You need to place the prenuptial in the contract in order to alleviate the things that can occur down the line. So there's going to be exit clauses if there's non-performance. There is going to be buyout clauses if, there's a reason to be exiting the agreement for other reasons. All of these things were required before I even signed the dotted lines. That all came because I knew my value. I knew what I was bringing to the relationship, and I wasn't looking at it like, oh, these guys are going to make me rich, so let me just give them whatever they need. A lot of times I think we as entrepreneurs look at it like, they're giving me so much, they're going to kickstart everything for me, that we want to give away everything at the outset before we even realize what we're giving up.
Eric, I got a quick question for you. How long do you talk to somebody before you jump into a negotiation? Like you made an analogy to marriage and prenups, which is very, very accurate. How long do you date before you decide to get married?
That's a great question.
That is a great question. And probably in this particular scenario, we dated for maybe 6 months before we ever legally put anything on paper, and then went back and forth with that for maybe another 2 months. So, not only were I was watching how they worked, how they delivered on their promises, what their personalities were, because I'm very much a culture person. I say it all the time. And I don't want to work with anybody that ultimately is going to burn my culture down because they're so vitriolic. They're so antagonistic when they're not getting their way.
Right.
And so there were a couple times when I had to establish boundaries based on that. And so now it's like a running joke. Eric is the level-headed one. Ultimately, we did actually sign an agreement. It was just very concrete and substantial. Now, from another point of view, I had a negotiation with a very large entity. Wasn't publicly traded, but one of the biggest companies in my industry. And ultimately, we never got married because especially when it is a big, moving, real company, there's so many stakeholders that until you get to the top stakeholder, you're really just passing gas. Right. It's really just having fun, having a conversation, because the real stakeholder can literally redline an agreement, throw it back at you, and then now it's a non-starter.
Yeah, so I think that's an important point.
Go ahead.
No, I think that I'm definitely hear you on that. I think that's a really important point, and especially on the dating timeline. I've found over the course of years, we don't necessarily have to be best friends, but we should at least be really friendly.
Right.
And I found that because you're bringing so many different levels of experience, especially when it's a new partnership in a new area, that one side may freak out or one side may question themselves, question things. I mean, things happen and things come up, especially when situations don't necessarily work out at first. When you come into a partnership together, there are always going to be stumbling blocks and barricades that you need to jump over, and you have to be willing to jump over that together. So, 6 months is actually a really interesting number, because I think I've never measured it, but it seems like the people that I end up working with for years, it's like I said, we don't have to necessarily be best friends, but we should be able to grab coffee. We should be able to hang out, talk about our kids, and really enjoy each other's company. Just be cool with each other, because when those stumbling blocks occur, it's easier at that point to just pick up, I know this, it's easier for me to say, or for another person to say, look, I know this other person isn't trying to pull something over on me. Let me just call them and find out what's going on. right? Let's talk about it. Let's work on it together. And I think just from my younger days, even back when I was doing animation, you had people who, I had years and years of experience and done hundreds of animated commercials by that point. And I had a guy who got a deal with it for a music video for a hip hop group that was still is very big.
What group?
I want to point a finger. I'll say
You can say the group. You don't have to say the person who had the deal. I'm just curious.
All right, it was the Roots.
Wow. Yeah.
So, I was excited because I love the Roots. I mean, Philadelphia Half-Life is like one of my-
Philadelphia.
Yeah. Come on, you gotta. It's fantastic. So, but it was a big deal for them, and it was their first deal. For me, in terms of animation, it was my bread and butter. So, what happened, in a nutshell, was we plotted everything out. We worked together. We signed the contract. I was very young, so it was a quick deal. They flew me out to where they were located. We had a meeting for a weekend, and we signed the deal. And 2 weeks later, they started sending me like legal notices because they weren't having stacks of animation, and it was laughable from my perspective because anyone that knows the process of animation would be like, look, A, I've delivered everything that I'm supposed to. That's on this, that's in the contract, and B, it's animation. Like these are the specific deadlines. These are the milestones. We talked about it. This is the date. They were upset because something that was due 3 months down the road they didn't already have. And it's like, and it was their misunderstanding and not they were uneducated in the process. They'd gotten the deal. And they were fortunate in that respect, but they didn't understand the process well enough to be able to become good partners, at least from my perspective, in that situation.
Right. I find that most partnerships occur because one people doesn't have a skill set and they need you to fill it. And so what happens is with a lot of bad partnerships or when you run into bad negotiations, it's usually because one person says, I want you to do this at much less value than what you're normally provided in order to deliver this service. So I've had negotiations where someone shows up. We have an upfront conversation about the potential of the relationship, and it's just a conversation. And then later down the road, as things sort of become clear, I understand who they are, what value they provide, I know my value, and we start comparing, trying to fill the gaps because we do want to move this opportunity together, forward together. You start saying that, oh, you know what? You're not actually able to fill the role that I thought you were going to fill. You're not able to fill the larger role that I thought you were going to fill. So I'm going to downgrade you or demote you in terms of where this relationship is really going to go. I've had to look at potential people that are going to work for me or potentially be high-level executive members on my team. And over the course of the 3 to 6 month dating period, I get a whiff of their personality. I get a whiff of their conflict resolution skills. I look at actually what they're saying versus what they're doing. And ultimately, their skill set doesn't allow for them to move into the vision that we initially set out. And that requires a very direct conversation, very direct. Got to sit down and say, I know you used to I said this. This is no longer applicable. Why? Because of this. I know I said this, but actually I prefer you to do this. And so a lot of times with leadership, whether it's a partnership or an employee or a contract that you're getting, telling someone that you changed your mind is difficult, especially when you're just starting out because you don't want to burn any bridges. But a lot of times it's so necessary. You just have to sit people down and say no, sooner rather than later.
I'm glad you said that. I want to really just jump in and kind of segue. I think there are two things that I want to talk about. I want to talk about a recent experience that I just had in terms of negotiations and having to say no, and also misunderstanding. But I also want to talk about, I know we talk about this a lot on the show, but I think it's important to have people to call when things don't pan out the way that you would have expected.
Right.
Or to talk to, before you even make a real decision. Right. So I recently had an experience. I met a guy, kind of like in a mentorship capacity, and, thought he was a cool guy. So we sat down and, we met like the next week, sat down, had a discussion. and this guy, I guess he had done some research on me and kind of saw the things that I've done, some of the accomplishments, the show, Definitely College Academy, things like that. And then when we sat down, he started to propose all of these things. He's like, man, you should sit on the board of this. You should do this. You should do that. You should do all of these things. And I'm kind of like, as we were wrapping up, I was kind of, in a whirlwind. I was like, man, this is so much stuff. He was like, well, what do you think? And kind of trying to get me to commit there in a moment. And I was like, well, I need to go and sit and actually write this stuff out and literally look at it, at these different opportunities. I understand what you're saying, and this stuff sounds great, but it is actually, something that, that these are things that require a lot of time and commitment. And so we circled back, and so we talked on the phone a few more times, and to the point to where he was, excited and wanted to introduce me to another one of his associates who ran a company. And so what it ended up boiling down to is, he talked to me about one of the things that I run that I don't really do a lot with. And he essentially wanted me to, wanted to do some type of collaboration, which was my understanding. And so, of course, I hop on this phone call with him and his associate, and we're having a conversation. And essentially what ends up happening is they wanted me to offset my intellectual property of a program and something that I've built that has taken me almost 6-7 years to build, and give it to them to offer to the public free of charge, in hopes that when they win a contract that I'll give them, that they can pay me then. And then I also give them a percentage of the profits, because it would be a situation where they help me market this product that I have. And when I said that that's not something that I would agree to, the gentleman got irate and said that is what I said that I was going to do, and that he could not believe this, that this was a waste of his time, and this, that, and the third, and just really got nasty on the phone. Now, me, being who I am, I kept the conversation professional, and then after I hung up the phone, I was a bit upset. But I then called you, Eric, and spoke to you about that, and I think what this was a novice mistake on my end, but also because I ignored some of the important, flags that were there in the beginning. And so it was it was a recent experience, which is why I was like, hey, you know what? This has to be a CEO Talks topic for today, because, even when you've been at it for a while, you still sometimes slip up. And, at first this situation was disappointing to me. But when I talked to you, Eric, and when I talked to another one of my friends, we talked about the fact that this was minimal damage.
Par for the course.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was something that was primarily, if anything was hurt, it would be more of my ego.
Yeah.
Because I got chewed out on the phone, and I don't even talk to people like that. You know what I mean? And I didn't think it was necessary for him to even carry on in that manner. But it showed me his level of professionalism as well.
It sounds like you dodged a bullet, man.
Right.
Because if from my experience, if somebody's willing to go down that fast, that hard, to really go off on you on the phone and not really sit back and say, okay, well, maybe we need to just talk about this a little more.
Right.
You dodged a huge bullet, because God forbid that person was better at covering their tracks, covering their attitude or their real personality. You sign that contract, and then the light switches. I've seen that many times where someone is just, snake oil salesman, man. Like, they just come off as like really good people, and you're like, man, where did this guy come from, man? This is going to be fantastic. This guy's the person I've been waiting for. And you sign that contract, and it's like you just signed your firstborn away or something. All of a sudden they come back, and you're just like, this is not the same person. They're trying to boss you around. They're attacking you. They're threatening lawsuits if you don't do X, Y, Z. Sounds like you might have dodged. You got lucky. You got lucky.
Well, I think one of the things, the phone call went south, but I think one of the key things I was oftentimes quiet when things were being proposed. And so I'm just listening. And one of the flags for me was that I never heard anything about paperwork. It's like, oh, well, let's do this partnership. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. And I'm kind of like, well, when is there a mention of how does this contractually pan out for all of us? When am I going to receive this in writing so that I understand what it is that you want me to do? Because even in those phone calls, that we would have leading up before this, I guess you could say, his meltdown, I would have to re-ask, okay, so what is it exactly that you're asking me?
Well, it seems
Right.
like from what you've just said that it almost sounds like a one-sided deal. Where he's saying all of the things that you're going to do for him, and the return is some
A maybe.
a maybe 70% of something that may or may not sell at some point down the road that may or may not happen.
Right.
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 Yeah, that's very true.
Right.
So you give me something concrete, and I got this lottery ticket.
Right. The scratch off. Come spend your whole check on the scratch off, and we might, you might win.
Right. But with no paperwork, I ain't got to pay you in a year.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna win this, and I might toss you something out of the goodness of my heart. So that was my recent experience with negotiation. I think that, definitely lesson learned. I think also, we talk about this again. Todd, you said you have a 3-part process of, how you pick your person. You said that earlier.
3-part. I have to remember this.
You said 3 things. I knew I should have wrote them down. Dude, they were perfect. I knew it. When you said it, I was like, oh, I should write this down. And then I was like, nah, he's going to remember. It sounds like he knows that. Dude, you said something, trust your gut.
Well, yeah, trust your gut's one of them.
Oh, my God. This dude
Here's the thing.
Right now.
Let me, it's coming back. So basically what happens when I attempt to go into a negotiation is I first get to know the person. I try to get to know the person as best I possibly can. Mm-hmm. If I haven't known that person for long enough, then I'll try to find someone else in that person's circle. So I'll reach out to somebody this person did a deal with. I'll usually just ask. I'll be like, hey, man, can I talk to somebody else that did a deal with you to see how it turned out? Or if they don't feel comfortable with that, I'll just reach out directly. Hey, man, I'm talking to so-and-so. What was your experience with that person? And then the third is trust your gut. And that's the hard part because a lot of times, with my worst experience, those first 2 things checked out. I had people in my circle that had done business with this person, had a good experience, and my gut told me that there was something off, but I just went for it, and I shouldn't have.
So beautiful people, what I'm going to say right now is what Todd just kind of said, but I'm going to give you just 3 things. Straight facts. Facts, B. Get to know the person, check their referrals, and also trust your gut. So those are the 3 things. I'm going to add one more to it. I'm going to say, be aware of the flags. And I guess that's a part of trusting your gut. But, really pay attention to it. Do not sidestep those flags, man, because you will regret it.
Hi, I'm Diane. I have a daughter, Nikki, and she's a senior at high school. She just got accepted for early decision into college. Prior to taking Kevin's program, we were pretty overwhelmed because her college debt after her merit scholarships looks like it's going to be about $150,000 in 4 years. Feeling pretty overwhelmed about that $150,000 potential debt, I decided to enroll in Kevin's debt-free college academy full course program. And I have to say the value for the money for what we got out of the program was absolutely amazing. Kevin takes you step by step with many, many different tips and many different strategies for not only the student, but for us as parents, for our student, things that we can do to really help save money and prepare.
If you or your child are looking to save money on college costs, sign up for Debt Free College Academy today at debtfreecollegeacademy.com using coupon code FREECOLLEGE. Beautiful people, this is the Create Your Life series. I'm your host, Kevin Y. Brown. We are here at CEO Talks, first Sunday of the month, and we have Todd Wahnish here, CEO of Clever Era, Eric Fondren here, CEO of iTelio. Gentlemen, are you here? Are you ready?
Yes.
Sir.
Yeah, we're jumping right.
I was itching because I had a couple points coming back about this negotiations, the different negotiations issue.
No, definitely.
I think one way to clarify it is to clarify it up front, and that's with 2 points. The first is that not every conversation you have about a potential opportunity is a negotiation. Mm-hmm. The only way it's a negotiation is if both people have placed an ask on the table. And I would venture to say that you weren't actually in a difficult negotiation, Kevin. You dodged a bullet because you didn't even move it even further because you never placed an ask on the table. You never said, I would like this.
Right.
All you said was, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. So you're setting lines, but you never provided an ask. And having an ask is not selfish, it's strategic. It means that this is what I need to get out of this in order for the work I put in to be worthwhile.
Absolutely.
And so if you can't even ask that question, not even worth continuing the conversation.
And you know what? Now that you say that, you're absolutely right, because everything that was being proposed to me actually, as you, even Todd, you said this right before the break, it definitely talked about, it definitely just highlighted me being of service. Yeah, it never highlighted any ROI except for, oh, you know, I have a network, or, you know, you might be able to blow up. And I'm, you know, one of my things is of course I do motivational speaking around the world, and we have a radio show, but I'm not big on being a celebrity, man. That's not my thing, you know. So it's when people start to say things like that to me, that's what the return is popularity. I'm like, dude, you know, I have good people in my life. I don't need to be, you know, more popular. You know, I don't
need the fame.
I don't need the fame, man. You know. But that's interesting. Because we're right back on the break, what I want to do, I want to tell everybody on Facebook Live, thank you for tuning in. And I also want to say that I'm having a goal-setting workshop on Saturday, the 13th. And so I want you to tune in. And also, you can tune in via webinar, or you can come and attend at 472 West 141st Street, which is here in Harlem. It's an absolute free workshop, but I help people set their goals for the new year and execute them. And you can go to Eventbrite, CYLseries.eventbrite.com, and sign up. It's 100% free. Had a gentleman come up to me 3 days ago and say that he actually saved $7,000 last year because of the goals that we set for him at the workshop last year. And so we've gotten a lot of good feedback about the workshop, which is why we're doing it again. It's an annual thing that I do. So anybody that needs help, all of Create Your Life family, I want you to just hop on Eventbrite.com, search for 2018 Goal Crushing Workshop, or search for Create Your Life series, and I want you to come in. I want to help you get right for 2018 because we are creating our best lives. Now, after that infomercial, back to difficult negotiations.
Awesome. That was awesome.
So
the
Eric,
master marketer right there.
Yeah, right. Eric, I got a question for you. So,
yes, sir.
What do you look for in a good negotiation? Like, what are you after?
You know, if the negotiation is a business deal, then I'm after a leverage. And when I say leverage, I don't mean like I'm flipping a light switch and the lights come on. I want to flip a light switch and a roller coaster comes on, the whole park lights up, right? Leverage means minimal work creates a huge output. That the result should be exponentially more valuable than the work put in. Mm-hmm. And so if it's a business opportunity, it shouldn't be this one-for-one. Oh, you know, I sold a couple of tickets for you, and so I'm going to pay you $50. It's like, no, I have a base of 1,000 people that I can put you in front of, and your potential revenue is going to be, 10x your input. So you absolutely need to know your business in order to know what leverage means. But you have to look at it like the work put in is going to exponentially grow your business. Otherwise, it's not work that you couldn't just go out and do yourself. There's no reason to give away profit or revenue for someone that can do something that you can do yourself.
Yeah, and I think, another thing is to be conscious of what is being said to you. Sometimes people might not want to give a profit revenue. They might try to ask you for a percentage of your company at a very minimal cost, which is something that I've experienced. Somebody wanted to hop on board and wanted to pay a couple $100s a month for a particular service, and was like, "Oh, well, since I'm covering this, I'm like an investor. Why don't you give me 5 or 10% of your brand or your business?" And you're kind of looking at this person like, "Dude, I'm helping you out. Are you serious right now?" So I think that's important too, is to be aware of all the different ways that people can ask something of you that may permanently be a hand in your pocket.
So have you guys... Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to just jump in and just ask, have either of you found in working that people on the other side of the table misinterpret negotiation for compromise?
Yes. I'll let you clarify that point for the audience, but I'm pretty sure I know what you mean.
Sure. I've found in some dealings that people, when you're working together to build something together, that what you may think of as a negotiation, the other person thinks of as a compromise. So a compromise is where you don't necessarily get what you want, and I don't necessarily get what we want, and we kind of create an equal ground together somewhere beneath where we're wanting to do. And there is an aspect to compromise in negotiation because there's techniques within negotiation that feel like compromise. Like I might start with a price that might be a little high, and we negotiate to a lower price that we both agree upon, or different lower terms or different terms that we both agree upon that both parties feel is positive. From my perspective, a negotiation, when I'm going into a negotiation, I actually have two jobs. And I don't know if I'm unique in this perspective, but I need to win, and I need the other person to feel like they won, right? Because only you know what makes you feel like a win. So it's important for me to know before we go into something, hey man, what do you need to get out of this so that you can feel like we just kick butt together. Yeah. So you tell me that hopefully, and hopefully it's what you really believe, and that way I can come to the table and say, okay, cool. For us to get that, here's what I need, and then I try to put something forward. And usually I'll even I've had a really good time with putting targets on the board, or even creating multiple options. It's a little bit of psychology, but I might say, well, option A we do this, option B we do that. Right. Whichever psychologically you're more inclined to choose one option over the other than say neither option. Right. If I say, well, do you want to go to the left or to the right?
Negotiating tactic.
It's a tactic.
But I would actually change it just slightly. I think the act of negotiation is all in and of itself a compromise. Right. So and this is why it's very important to go into a negotiation knowing what your floor is, knowing what you can't compromise past. And this is how a lot of people fail when they're naive or amateurish in a negotiation. They go in with their floor because they think that's the most fair ask that they should make. And they don't want to come across seeming greedy or whatever the case is. So they come in with their floor and they keep getting it chopped. And now that they've compromised past their floor, they have a bad deal on their hands. Right. And so in order to compromise well, you have to know what your boundaries are. You have to know where you're comfortable stepping into and where you'll never go. And so as soon as you have a negotiation and someone makes an ask of you or you're making an ask of them, you should know how far you can push them or how far they can push you before the deal itself is no longer tenable for anybody. And you say that you should win and they should feel like they won. I would probably say that depends on the type of the negotiation, because if it's if the negotiation started from bad circumstances, then everybody's already upset. Right. So their only win is to get out with the least pain possible. And so I heard a guy say that to me, that the best deal are where everybody is just a little bit upset about some of the circumstances. Just a little bit.
Maybe. The only difference I would put into that is the only balance to that is I would include that when I suggest something like, well, it's my job to make you feel like you won, it isn't to say that I pulled something over or that you didn't get a good deal but you feel like you did. It's that it's up to you as the other person across the table to know what makes you happy. If you say I want X and that'll make me happy, and I give you X and you are not happy, then that's not on me. I did my best to make you feel like you got a really good deal out of it, right? Because I'm coming up and trying my best, even if it's 3/4 to X, or half of X, or whatever we can land on. It's your job to know what you need, and I think you covered that pretty well. It's that floor. You have to know where the floor is and know where the ceiling is, and kind of work in between the two, and find a place that you can be satisfied.
Some of the many times I pushed myself past my floor when I was either young and dumb at the negotiation table, it was because I was banking on that negotiation. And I think one of the points need to be made is that no deal is real until you've been paid for it. I wasn't going to say until it's inked, but obviously Todd's earlier story means that's not necessarily the case. So no deal is real until you have been paid for it. And so you always keep other irons in the fire, even if the negotiation you're currently in is a really big one and could put you on the map. Always have other irons in the fire, because you never know how long it's going to take or whether or not it's going to come to fruition.
Have either of you gentlemen ever purposely made a bad deal? Like, purposefully made a bad deal?
But like it was a survival thing? Like that?
Possibly.
when you say purposely, I would say this. I'm reading this book called Profit First. And it's a really good book.
That's a very good book.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So yeah, you know it. But he talks about that, the mentality of, you know what I mean, kind of being in survival mode, from a profit standpoint. So, as an entrepreneur, sometimes you have this mentality like, oh, I just need to land this next deal, you know what I mean? And then I'll be okay. And then you end up, spending all of that money on, whatever your operational costs are. And then you have to find another deal and stuff like that. So I don't know that it was a bad deal on purpose, but I knew that it wasn't the best deal, but I needed the money. So yes, in the past I have done a speech under rate but after that was earlier in my days. Now I'll say, you know what, I can't come in at that rate because I know that I cannot raise this any higher. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like and sometimes people are like, oh, well, you come in at this rate and then, you do it a little bit lower and, we just want to see what you got. Or we want to make sure that, it's a good investment and then, next time we'll do this. And it's like, no.
Right.
No.
Right.
So intentionally, no. But knowingly, yes. I guess that's super similar, so I don't even know.
One nuance point.
What about you, Eric? Like in bootstrapping your business or when you were getting started, did you ever have to give just a sweetheart deal to a vendor or a partner that you just knew you weren't going to have a real good return on, just so that you could use that to leverage future opportunities?
Oh, well, go ahead.
A little different.
I was
right?
definitely in a position where I was offering some sweetheart deals, knowing that it was probably not the best business decision, and thankfully it didn't come to fruition in that way. Mm-hmm. And I've been around when leadership in my organization before I was CEO made a couple of bad deals in terms of the survivalist mindset. And in fact, I learned a lot about negotiation watching other people negotiate very, very badly, and seeing them give away more than they were supposed to, seeing them come in with the ask that was their floor or less than their floor, just to be, altruistic in the negotiation. And I learned really quickly that nobody's altruistic in business. Nobody is. And that's fine. It's not meant to be. You're supposed to make profit. It's supposed to be something that continues itself. If you're altruistic, you're going to give away more than you take in. And so ultimately, I've seen it enough to not do it myself intentionally, but I have gotten to the point and got lucky and been pulled back from the brink a couple times. Yeah.
I will say this too, that there have definitely been times like where I might have went under rate if it was a network that I was trying to get into, but it was only slight because the word is going to travel. Like even in my contract as a speaker, one of the clause is don't, certain airlines I will not fly on, but also, rate is not to be negotiated. I mean, not to be shared. I mean, of course it probably is. But therefore you have to really stick to your guns when doing that. But if you're trying to get your foot into a door, sometimes you might have to take just a little bit of a hit because you know that the ROI is going to be a lot bigger and a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So, I would say.
But that's not the definition of a bad deal, though. That's, a bad deal is that, it's not going to work in your favor the whole time. Cutting your rate to get in the door or something, there's a future ROI that you're expecting there. And sometimes you can get the bad deal at thinking that will come to fruition, and it doesn't. And that's really what makes a bad deal, I would think.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you said, too, was also know what your ask is before you get to the table. Because I feel like, people, when you seem unprepared, man, you are a target. And that's why people sometimes try to get you to make decisions right there on the spot. Because they really, really want to catch you off balance and get you to commit so that you're locked in, and then they're on the upside of the negotiation. But I will also say this, though. And, Lenore said this. She said, we want to move past the conversation and the feeling of just profit and move into relationship. I'll find the exact quote. But she said you want to move from being transactional into relational. That's what she said.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think that's important because even if you get what you want in that moment, it's like the long-term damage is not worth it because you no longer have the relationship and the resource.
And I would say that I think the goal of having a relationship with the person is so that you can find people like that, because there are people out there who will negotiate and try to take you
in
out.
Good faith.
They will. Well, there are people that will do it in good faith, but there are people that will try to take your head off for sport. Like that is how they get their kicks is to bury you and get the deal and just run the table on you. Everybody's different.
And I think that to me the bigger things is that like one of my personal things is just I always want to be able to pick up the phone and have a conversation with somebody who has their hand on the go button. Mm-hmm. Like if I call you and I say, I got somebody, they need an opportunity, or, can you make this happen? Todd, you have the power to say go. Like, yes, they're hired, this, that, and the other. And I feel like if you're just operating just to get your kicks off of taking advantage of people, it's going to be short-lived. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think that I just don't find that to be wise, personally.
It's not wise, but I've ran into some people that make a living off of it. So I wouldn't say that they're not successful at what they do. But from a don't waste your time perspective, definitely having that ask up front puts people, it'll put the wrong person back on their heels, and it'll put the right person will lean forward and say, okay, yes, no, how about this? And it'll continue that conversation. And so having your ask, no matter what their ask is, letting them know up front that this is what you require if you're going to be doing anything can cut conversations short real quick.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay. And we got some people on Facebook Live who are asking questions. So Breon Nicole Davis, thank you so much for posting the Eventbrite for the goal crushing workshop. And she also asked, what's the name of the book that you mentioned? The book that I mentioned that Todd has also read, of course, is Profit First. And it's by Mike Miklowitz.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. So it's called Profit First. It says Profit First on the front, and then it has a circle written around it. He also has a TED Talk, which I watched for some odd reason. I was up at 4:30 this morning, so I watched that. But it's transform your business from a cash-eating monster to a money-making machine. And I've gotten a lot of value out of it so far. Another book, Built to Sell, I've read recently.
I have that. I have not. I have the audiobook. I haven't listened to it yet, though. I'm a fan of always getting the Kindle and then you get the Audible version. So I read it and keep my highlights. That book is amazing in terms of just understanding moving your business from a service to a product to make it sellable. And he breaks down the steps so good. And he talks about it from a standpoint of a guy. I believe the guy's name is not Todd, but the guy he basically has an ad agency, and he's basically a slave to his clients. He has people who work under him, but all the clients only want to deal with him. Yep. So he talks about transforming it into just more so ironing out the process and it just being operated straight from a product standpoint. And he hires some sales reps, and I mean, the thing, it takes off, and he's able to sell it years later for like $10 million, where it was only had a valuation of maybe like $600K or something like that, if I'm quoting it correctly. So I thought that was... I've been doing some reading, man. And it's enlightening. Also, Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. Classic. I think Eric, did you start it yet?
I have not started yet. I picked up a couple other books, not quite self-help related, or moving the business forward. Sometimes I gotta de-stress. So right now I'm reading John Quincy Adams' biography. Okay. And I also picked up this book about the history between Israel and America. Whole different segment, but got to stay multidimensional.
Well, I think that's important, to highlight. Oftentimes you sitting in a CEO seat, man, and you're like business. That's every single day. You talking about you read it from John Quincy Adams and American diplomatic relations and things like that. I think that's important to highlight because number one, we're dealing in a international economy. And you need to be able to relate to people. But number two, also, bro, you have to be a person.
Yes.
A human, and you have to know. Right. You have to know and understand people. So kudos, I would say.
That's pretty good.
So actually, we're now at the end of the show. So gentlemen, please give out your contact information and, social media handles. So Create Your Life family can stay abreast of what you have going on and,
Sure. I guess I'll go first here. So you can reach me at cleverera.com. That's CLEVERERA.com. If you just put your email in there, we stay in touch. It's pretty simple.
Okay. Eric?
Great. Yes, you can find me on Twitter, Eric in Fondren, and you can also email me at any point, Eric@Itelio, that's ITELL.io.
Okay. And Create Your Life family, where you can catch me. on Instagram at Kevin Y. Brown or on Twitter at Kevin Y. Brown. I also want to highlight the fact that you, if you know who it is that you want to hear from in the, on the show, then please, email us, info@cylseries.com. Let us know who you want on the show. We're more than happy to bring that person on, and we have a music contest coming up for independent artists. So want to keep you abreast of that, let you know that, we're still growing. It's Create Your Life. Always. We got merchandise coming soon as well. And here we are with Doobie, My Thing, some hometown music. We're going to end the show, and you have a blessed Sunday. Beautiful people, if you enjoyed this episode of the Create Your Life series, be sure to download it from our podcast, which is available on createyourlifeseries.com, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Music. Also, be sure to leave a review of the podcast. You can catch us live on Sundays from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time via 90.3 FM in New York, or on Facebook Live at facebook.com/KevBrown1. We encourage you to participate in the conversation on Facebook or call in at 212-650-6903. Follow us on Instagram at CYL Series and at Kevin Y. Brown. Be blessed, and we'll see you back here live next week.
Create your life.
Crée ta propre vie.
Create your life.
创造你的生活。
Create your life.
Crea la tua vita.
Create your life.
On skip your liver.
You better create your life.
Create your life.
Create la vie.
Create your life.
Create your life.